Scary Mysteries Twisted Twos, William Suff and Yowie. Tales of hauntings, murder, and scary mysteries. Every week, Twisted Twos dives into a pair of uniquely terrifying true stories that are worthy of a more in-depth look. For this week, we check out the murderous instincts of a local good guy named William Suff and the mysterious existence of a tribe of people in Australia. Get ready for Scary Mysteries Twisted Twos. Number 1. William Suff. Known as the Riverside Prostitute Killer and the Elsinore Killer, William Suff was described by his neighbors in Riverside, California as a friendly nerd who was always doing things to help people. But underneath that good guy exterior was a monster hiding within. In the 1970s, Suff's first official murder occurred in Texas. He was convicted by a jury, together with his then-wife Teryl, for beating their 2-month-old daughter to death. His wife's conviction was later reversed because of insufficient evidence. William, however, was sentenced to 70 years in prison but served only 10 before being released in 1984. Once he got out, he created a likable persona for the public to see. Those who knew him say he was friendly, and he worked various jobs, including being a county stock clerk where he delivered supplies to the task force in charge of solving crimes in the community. It was later on discovered that most of the crimes being investigated were actually being committed by none other than William himself. He had a thing for vanity plates and cooking chili. His chili recipe was so good, he even won the Riverside County Employee Chili Cook-Off. Later on, it was believed he added a secret ingredient to his award-winning meal. It was the skin and muscle from one of his victims. The first body discovered was of 23-year-old Michelle Gutierrez. She had been dumped in the Rubidoux industrial area, which was just a short drive from Riverside. She had suffered multiple stab wounds, her clothes torn away from her body, and her private parts had been mutilated. Weeks later, on December 11th, the body of 24-year-old Charlotte Palmer was found. She was badly decomposed, and so it was difficult to assess whether it was related to the Gutierrez murder. The third body was of 37-year-old Linda Ortega, and she was found naked and mutilated on a dirt road leading to Lake Elsinore. It was determined she had been dead for 3 days, and that she had high amounts of cocaine and alcohol in her system. A fourth body was found in May of 1987, that of Martha Bess. She was close to where Ortega's body was, and there were signs of strangulation, mutilation, as well as high levels of drugs in the bloodstream. She was naked in a spread eagle position, indicating that she had been posed. After the fourth body, it was clear to authorities that a serial killer was now on the loose. All of the first initial victims were found to have similar backgrounds, with extensive rap sheets and a history of prostitution. A huge task force was created to find this killer, and knowing this effort, Suff either stopped killing for 2 years or found a different dumping ground still unknown to police today. But in 1989, Suff struck again. A known prostitute named Linda Ruiz was found naked with one of her breasts completely removed from her body. Her neck was twisted and her head buried in the sand. Like the other victims, alcohol and drugs were in her system, including large quantities of sand in her throat. 3 additional victims were found in 1989. This included the body of 23-year-old Christina Leal. This time, the victim was fully clothed and had a stab wound through her heart, but she was actually killed via asphyxiation like the other victims. Various pubic hair and fibers were recovered from her body, and they matched with those from the previous victims. However, the most shocking thing with Leal's body is that the coroner found that the killer had placed a light bulb up inside her. Police were worried the killer was escalating in his deviousness. His killing times were becoming shorter, and he was redressing the bodies, posing them and doing things never done before. By the time 1990 came, investigators were greeted by other victims. All the women were known prostitutes, and all of them were strangled to death. One of these was Cheryl Coker. She was severely mutilated and her right breast removed and placed next to her torso. Shoe prints were found on the scene and photographed. Other bodies still turned up at the end of 1990 and again in 1991. At least one potential victim managed to get away. A local prostitute was picked up by a man driving a gray van. Once inside, he immediately began assaulting her, but the girl managed to jump out of the vehicle. However, this man apparently stopped at the next corner and picked up the prostitute's friend, 23-year-old Kelly Hammond, and she was found dead later on that night. With the help of the victim that got away, a composite sketch was made and broadcast, but still more women were killed afterwards. One of the bodies was even placed close to the police station, angering the cops because they knew the killer was mocking them. Authorities finally caught a break when police officer Frank Order was on patrol when he noticed a van matching the description shared by the witness making an illegal U-turn. He quickly flashed his lights and called for backup. The driver of the van was William Suff. He was polite and cordial, but it was discovered he was driving on an expired registration and plates. In trying to find if he was responsible for the murders, reporters began combing through his past, unveiling his previous prison term and crime. Although the majority of the evidence against Suff was circumstantial, hair and fibers found on the victims were linked directly to him and his vehicle. This eventually sealed his fate. William Suff was found guilty of 12 murders, and on August 17, 1995, he was sentenced to death. Right now, he is still residing in San Quentin Prison, sitting on death row. Number 2. Yowie. Although not as popular as crop circles or alien sightings, Australia is one distinctive tribe that seems to never go away, the Yowie. Described as a group of large ape-like creatures, the Yowie is the Bigfoot counterpart from down under. These large hairy creatures were part of Australian Aboriginal legends, but many people today believe the Yowie are actually still around. One of the first accounts was in 1804 inside a book titled Modern Geography, a description of the empires, kingdoms, states, and colonies with the oceans, seas, and isles in all parts of the world by John Pinkerton. Although it was a small comment, it said that one Aborigine population was sharing the Sydney Harbor with another tribe. This other tribe was described as having wide, flat noses, prominent jaws, and thick lips. Interestingly, the Aborigines regarded them as a different population entirely and called them the Yowies, meaning hairy people. Moreover, at least one tribe from northern Queensland told stories of living alongside the Yowie, even fending off attacks from them over the centuries. Historically, there are two popular descriptions. The first is that they are believed to be of the Gigantopithecus race, which were large ape-like species measuring between 6 and 10 feet tall and weighing up to 1,000 pounds. Aside from the typical ape-like hairy body of the Yowie, their fingers were distinctive in that they didn't have any. Instead, they had talons. This type of Yowie was said to be more aggressive towards humans. The other type are those described as being smaller, around 4 to 5 feet tall, and are believed to be ancient types of hominids that survived throughout the years. Historical accounts of the Yowie are many and varied. The first ones that reached London were in 1820, when a letter included an encounter that happened in 1789 when a party of settlers went out on a hunting trip in the deep forests of Australia. As they were returning to their camp, they saw an animal twice the height of an ordinary man standing upright and looking directly at them. Another curious image taken by a man named Rich Jones supposedly shows a Yowie sitting in the background. The picture was taken in 1832 and shows two loggers sitting in the foreground, but in the background a large creature is supposedly present, sitting just behind the men with his hands on his lap. As for more recent accounts, in December of 1979, a couple named Leo and Patricia George were out in the forest where they found a mutilated kangaroo. They said the creature that killed it was just 40 feet away from them and stopped to look back at the couple before disappearing into the thick brush. The majority of the sightings come from the central coastal region of New South Wales, as well as in Queensland's Gold Coast. The Blue Mountains outside Sydney also holds many sightings of these supposed creatures. Rex Gilroy, an expert on the creature, is said to have investigated over 3,000 cases of Yowie sightings. He began writing about them in the 1970s, publishing his works in various newspapers and magazines. As for whether this large Bigfoot cousin is real or not, various hair samples, footprints, photographs, audio recordings, and even videos of the Yowie are said to have been captured, but so far, there are no skeletal remains or other physical evidence to provide definitive proof. So there were two of the most murderous and interesting stories around. The world can be a crazy place, and Twisted Twos is sure to show you why. If you enjoyed this video, then please remember to subscribe to our channel. We have new videos coming out every single week that we know you'll enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.